the moment when everything in your life feels out of control isn't when you need more control, but when you need deeper connection to who you are beneath the chaos. What if the crisis isn't the enemy of connected self-leadership, but the greatest teacher? Last episode, we explored how to bring your authentic self to professional environments without compromising your effectiveness. Today, we're diving into life's inevitable storms. Those moments when all your carefully constructed routines, relationships, and plans get disrupted, and you're forced to discover what remains when everything familiar falls away. The authentic professional leadership we practice, staying true to your values while navigating workplace dynamics, becomes even more crucial during personal crisis. Because when life gets chaotic, the temptation to abandon your principles in favor of just surviving can be overwhelming. Yet these are precisely the moments when your connected self-leadership skills matter most. Not just for you, but for everyone depending on your stability. I'm Dr. Cara. Here's what I've observed about how people respond to crisis and major life transitions. Most of us abandon our self-leadership practices exactly when we need them the most, defaulting to either rigid control or complete chaos. This creates what I call crisis debt, the accumulated damage from making decisions based on panic rather than wisdom, the exhaustion from fighting against the unchangeable circumstances, and the disconnection from your authentic self that happens when survival mode becomes your default operating system. During crisis, you might find yourself micromanaging everything you can control because so much feels uncontrollable. Or you might shut down completely, feeling overwhelmed by decisions that used to feel manageable. You could abandon healthy routines because they seem insignificant compared to the magnitude of what you're facing, not realizing that these practices are your anchor in the storm. The underlying pattern is always the same. Crisis triggers our deepest control patterns, causing us to either grasp tightly or to give up entirely. Here's what transforms crisis from destructive to developmental. Your capacity to lead yourself through difficulty determines your ability to help others do the same. Let me share a personal crisis that taught me the difference between surviving chaos and finding grace within it. A few years ago, my father was diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of cancer. The diagnosis came suddenly, followed by a whirlwind of medical appointments, treatment decisions, and the complete restructuring of family dynamics as we rallied around his care. At the same time, I was in the middle of a major career transition, and my son was in the process of applying to college. It felt like every area of my life was demanding attention that I did not have the capacity to give. My initial response was exactly what I teach people not to do. I tried to control everything. I created elaborate spreadsheets for my father's medical information, took over coordinating my son's communication with his university applications, and researched every treatment option obsessively and attempted to manage everyone else's emotional responses while I completely ignored my own. The crisis debt accumulated rapidly. I was sleeping poorly, eating irregularly, and snapping at people I loved. I had abandoned my morning practices because there wasn't time. I stopped exercising because other things were more important and was operating in constant crisis mode when no immediate crisis existed. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine family meeting about my father's care plan. Everyone was on edge, and a simple question about scheduling triggered a heated argument among my family members. I found myself trying to manage everyone's emotions while my own overwhelm reached a boiling point. I excused myself, went to my car, and sat, feeling completely defeated. That's when I realized I had been fighting the wrong battle. I wasn't fighting cancer or chaos. I was fighting my own inability to accept what I couldn't control. In that moment, I used my RPR method, receive. I noticed my physical exhaustion, my emotional overwhelm, and the reality that my father's illness was bigger than my ability to manage it. I also received the love that was driving my family's stress. We were all scared and trying to help in our own ways. Perceive. I realized that my attempt to control everything wasn't helping anyone, including my father. I was so busy managing the crisis that I wasn't present for the relationships that mattered. I considered what I knew about my family members' characters. They were all caring people under stress, not obstacles to my management plan. Respond. I made a different choice. Instead of going back to mediate the argument, I called my father directly. Dad, I said, I've been so focused on managing your illness that I haven't asked, how are you doing? Like, how are you really doing? What was followed was one of the most meaningful conversations that we had ever had. He wasn't looking for me to fix everything. He needed me to be his daughter, not his case manager. He wanted connection, not control. This crisis taught me how the 3 pillars of connected leadership becomes essential during life storms. Recognizing your value, knowing your worth, means understanding your worth isn't determined by your ability to control crisis outcomes. When external circumstances shift dramatically, your inherent value remains constant. Crisis often triggers our deepest insecurities, making us feel like we're failing if we can't fix everything. Embodying grace, know your truth, means accepting that you can be simultaneously strong and vulnerable, capable and overwhelmed, helpful and limited. Grace allows you to navigate crisis without abandoning your humanity or expecting superhuman performance from yourself. Conquering control, knowing when to pivot, becomes most crucial during crisis because the temptation to grasp for control intensifies exactly when control is least available. The pivot is from fighting unchangeable circumstances to focusing your energy where you can make a meaningful difference. The receive, perceive, respond methodology becomes your storm anchor. Receive means acknowledging the full reality of your situation without immediately trying to fix it or change it. This isn't passive acceptance, it's accurate assessment. What's actually happening? What do you have the capacity for? What are others actually asking of you? Perceive means examining your assumptions about what crisis requires of you, while also considering what you know about the people involved before making decisions based on stress-driven interpretations. Are you trying to control outcomes or support people? Are you operating from your values or from fear? When family members seem difficult during crisis, consider their character under normal circumstances. They're likely expressing care through stress rather than creating intentional problems. Respond means taking action from your centered self, rather than from panic or avoidance. Sometimes this means stepping up in ways that stretch you. Sometimes it means stepping back to preserve your capacity for what matters the most. Let me give you a scenario many people face. Caring for aging parents while managing your own family and career responsibilities. Your parents need increasing support, your children need attention, and your work demands have not decreased. The crisis debt approach is to sacrifice your own well-being to meet everyone else's need, operating in constant emergency mode until you're depleted or resentful. Or you might avoid the situation entirely because it feels too overwhelming, accumulating guilt and anxiety instead. But what if you applied connected self-leadership to this challenge? Receive. You acknowledge that this is a complex, long-term situation requiring sustainable strategies rather than crisis responses. You notice your own capacity, your parents' actual needs versus what you think they should need, and what support is available from others. Perceive. You examine your assumptions about being a good adult child, considering what you know about your parents' character and values. Are they asking you to sacrifice your health for their care, or would they want you to find sustainable solutions? You also consider what story you're telling yourself about this situation and whether it's serving anyone. Respond. You create an approach that honors your care for your parents while maintaining your own well-being. This might mean having honest conversations about needs and limits, involving other family members or professional support, or accepting good enough care is better than perfect care that destroys your capacity. Here's what I want you to practice. The storm anchor. Practice for maintaining connection during chaos. This isn't about eliminating stress or controlling outcomes. It's about staying connected to yourself when everything external feels unstable. Your daily storm anchor exists even during crisis. Maintain one small practice that connects you to your centered self. This might be 5 minutes of conscious breathing, a brief walk, writing 3 things you're grateful for, or simply checking in with your body. The specific practice matters less than consistency. Crisis RPR check-in. When you feel overwhelmed by circumstances, use a modified RPR approach. Receive. What's actually happening right now versus what I'm afraid might happen? Perceive. What am I trying to control that I can't actually control? What do I know about the people involved that might help me respond more wisely? Respond. What is one thing I can do right now that aligns with my values and serves the situation? During crisis, practice what I call energy triage, consciously choosing where you direct your limited resources. Ask yourself, is this action helping the people I love most, or am I trying to control outcomes I can't actually influence? The goal isn't to eliminate the crisis stress. It's to move through crisis while maintaining connected to who you are and what matters the most. Here's what I've learned about the difference between acceptance and resignation during crisis. Acceptance is active engagement with reality as it is. Resignation is passive defeat that abandons your ability to respond wisely. Acceptance means saying, I can't control this outcome, but I can control my response to it. Resignation says, nothing I do matters, so why try? Acceptance preserves your agency while releasing attachments to the specific outcomes. Resignation abandons both agency and hope. The most profound crisis insight is that your capacity to remain connected to yourself during difficulty becomes a stabilizing force for others. When you're grounded in the storm, you give others permission to find their own center rather than adding to the collective panic. This doesn't mean you're suppressing your emotions or pretending everything is fine. It means feeling your feelings while maintaining connection to deeper wisdom. You can be scared and centered, grieving and graceful, overwhelmed and responsive. When you learn to lead yourself through crisis with connection rather than control, several transformative things happen. You develop resilience that comes from flexibility rather than rigidity. You discover strengths you didn't know you had, not forcing outcomes, but through staying present with whatever arises. Your relationships deepen because people experience you as a stabilizing presence during their own difficulties. You stop seeing crisis as evidence of failure and start recognizing it as an invitation to discover what remains when everything changeable falls away. You become someone that others can count on, not because you fix everything, but because you remain yourself when everything else feels chaotic. Most importantly, you learn your most powerful self-leadership often happens not when life is going according to plan, but when it's not. The wisdom you develop navigating your own storms becomes the compassion you offer others navigating theirs. You develop what I call dynamic stability. The ability to remain centered while adapting to changing circumstances. Like a tree that bends in the wind without breaking, you learn to move with life's storms without losing your roots. All the self-leadership skills you've been developing, conscious choices, emotional regulation, authentic relationship, and professional integrity, converge during a crisis to determine whether you grow through difficulty or are diminished by it. Crisis doesn't build character, it reveals it. Connected self-leadership practices are what ensure that what gets revealed serves both you and those who depend on you. Next episode, we're exploring how all these practices integrate in a way of being. How do you know when connected self-leadership has moved you from something you practice to who you are? I'll share what that integration looks like and how to sustain these practices for lifelong growth and impact. This week, establish one small storm anchor and try the RPR check-in when you feel overwhelmed. Remember, the goal isn't to control the storm, it's to remain yourself within it. I'm curious to know what crisis or challenge most activates your need to control everything. How might staying connected to yourself change how you navigate that difficulty. Share in the comments, because our struggles become wisdom when we're willing to learn from them. Remember, your capacity to lead yourself through difficulty determines your ability to help others do the same. Crisis isn't the enemy of connected self-leadership. It's where your practice becomes most powerful.